Thank you for standing by, and welcome to the CBA July US Politics Update. I would now like to hand the conference over to Ms. Hope Tassie, Managing Director, Client Risk Solutions, Global Markets, IB&M, CBA. Please go ahead.
Thank you all for taking the time to get on this Commonwealth Bank of Australia call today to hear from Jared Mondschein, Director of Research at the United States Study Centre, as he discusses the unprecedented decision of US President Joe Biden to not seek re-election in the upcoming US federal election. I'm Hope Tassie, Managing Director, Client Risk Solutions at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and I'm delighted to welcome Jared for this very pertinent discussion today. This is a web call, audio only, so there will be no slides. In Jared's capacity as the Director of Research at the United States Study Centre and previous roles as research analyst at Bloomberg in Washington, D.C., he understands firsthand how developments like what we've seen in the last 28 hours can impact markets, sentiment and stability. Jared, without further ado, I will kick off the call, and I have three pertinent questions for you that I think will capture what's on everyone's mind. I'll run through the three and then you can handle each of them one by one. So the first one is whether the Democrats now have a chance. The second one is who runs as Kamala Harris's running mate. And third and final, what does this now mean for Australia? So Jared, thank you for joining the call, and if I can ask you to provide your comments on the first question, whether the Democrats now have a chance.
Yeah, I can make this call quick and just say yes, and I think we're done, right? No, I think this definitely does increase the likelihood of the Democrats having a chance. Well, let's not forget that the reason why Joe Biden gave up was not only because perhaps he's a patriot and he loves his country, party over country, or country over party, all that stuff, and he is a patriot and all that. But in reality, he had no pathway forward. The funding and the polling were only going in one direction for him, and that was down. The funders were basically telling him there's no runway left for you. The polling numbers were only getting worse and worse, and the challenge for Biden was that the way to deal with the way to recover from that disastrous debate performance last month, let's not forget, it was not even a full month ago that took place. But the way to recover from that is to do more live interviews. And yet, every time he did them, he would make more mistakes. It was just one mistake after another. And so he really was caught between not going in public and people criticizing him for not going in public, and going in public and people criticizing him for what he did in the public. So now that we have a completely different race, I think the Democrats are more confident than ever. And that's, I think, evident in the fact that they are breaking fundraising records. In the 24 hours since the announcement, Kamala Harris has already raised $81 million. Now, to put that in context, you probably have heard in the news media about how it was really important that Harris be the one to take the reins from here instead of someone else, because if Harris didn't take the reins, then they wouldn't be able to keep the money that they had raised in their campaign. I think it's important to note the amount of money that they had in that campaign was $91 million. So already in a 24-hour period, they have raised close to as much as they had raised many, many months before. They just continue to break records in terms of not only just fundraising and for their campaign, but also in commitments to political action committees that are aligned with Harris and the Democrats. And so I think you finally have a base that is more energized than ever. Let's not forget, a month ago, we had a majority of Americans who did not want either of these candidates to win this election. And now we have the Democratic base energized, the Trump base doubly energized. Now, the question is, do the Democrats now have a chance? I think for about I'd say 6 months, Donald Trump won practically every single news cycle, whether it be Supreme Court decisions, whether it be his assassination attempts, whether it be Joe Biden's debate performance. It was just one win after another for him. But the first loss, in my view, is choosing J.D. Vance. Why do I say that? It's because he does not expand the electoral map for Joe Biden and, for Donald Trump. And I think you're already seeing now the Trump team leaking to the media that they're really concerned that they made the wrong choice, because Kamala Harris completely changes the game for the Democrats and provides an energy and opportunity for them that they just did not have with Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. So I think more than ever, the Democrats have a chance, but it is still far too early to tell. And I think a lot of the sort of understanding of where she stands will depend on her first choice as the Democratic nominee, and that's in deciding who will be her running mate. If you want, I can talk about her running mate.
Yes,
Hope?
and Jared, yes, please do. In terms of, who now runs as her running mate?
Yeah, there are all sorts of great memes online right now where you can see people taking photos of wine lists and talking about the different sort of whites, like old whites, sparkly whites, trendy whites. What we can be sure is that I don't think Kamala Harris is going to choose another non-white woman to run with her. I think given the concerns that many will have, that the Trump administration, the Trump campaign will go out of its way to highlight that perhaps she's too progressive, perhaps she's not a real American. That you can call it racism, sexism, whatever you want, but that is basically how they've already started to define her, as the DEI candidate, the diversity candidate. I think you're going to see a white male be her running mate, most likely. Now, the question is, which one? The reason why you're hearing the names you're hearing, and there are a number of different names you're hearing. You're hearing the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. You're hearing governor of Kentucky, the governor of North Carolina. All these are Democrats. The governor of Pennsylvania, governor of Michigan. Now, why those states in particular? Let's not forget what decided the 2016 and the 2020 elections were these key swing states. And it was only 75,000 votes in 2016 that decided that election, and 45,000 votes in 2020 that decided that election. So if they can get one of these swing state governors, especially a swing state with the most electoral votes out of all those, which is Pennsylvania, that really sends them on a pathway to success. Again, the U.S. election is decided not by popularity, by total vote count, but by the Electoral College. And you want those Electoral College votes that Pennsylvania has. And so if they choose, for example, the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, he is young, he's dynamic, he has already won that state of Pennsylvania. That means if he is on the ticket with Kamala Harris, he is both a moderate and therefore not making the ticket too progressive, but two, a Midwestern elected leader who's already won one of the most important swing states to win. So I think choosing someone like Josh Shapiro will be very important. It doesn't have to be Josh Shapiro, but choosing someone who can help expand the electoral map. As I said before, J.D. Vance does not expand the electoral map for Donald Trump. He is just another MAGA white man. He doesn't actually help Trump politically. He energizes the base, but in my view, the Trump base will always be energized. I think it was political malpractice, in my view, to choose J.D. Vance. If I were thinking or advising the Trump campaign, I would have told them to go with a number of different options, including just a woman instead of just another white man, let alone a Midwestern woman or someone who could help gain those keys, gain that key support in the swing state. So I think someone like Josh Shapiro for Kamala Harris, though, will prove decisive. If not her, then you also have someone like Mark Kelly, who's the senator from Arizona. He's a former astronaut. He's married to Gabby Giffords, who was famously shot in the head but survived when she was a congresswoman representing a district in Arizona. But then you also, as I said before, you have other governors, including Andy Beshear in Kentucky. Kentucky's not a key swing state, and it's probably going to go Republican in the presidential race, but that doesn't mean that Andy Beshear wouldn't be a good choice, because he is a moderate Dem who can convince, I think, the swing voters that the Harris administration would not be too progressive, and it would actually have some good Appalachian ties and sort of stable heartland America type of sentiment. So I think what I'm really paying attention to is what Kamala Harris does with her first choice as the presumed nominee.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Jared. Appreciate those insights. And then just moving over to that third question that we had for you in terms of what does this mean for Australia? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, to be honest, the shorthand is not much. One thing that we do at the USA Center is we do try to provide analysis for the unquenchable thirst for news on U.S. politics. Back in 2016, Australians had won their own election, Americans had their own election as well, and Australians consumed twice as much information about the U.S. election as they did their own. So it's just endless interest, and it's great. I love talking about it. But with that said, I think it's important to know what just the dynamics of the U.S.-Australia relationship and how much of it is structural and above and unrelated to whatever happens between presidents. One thing we recently published a few months ago is something called Red Book, Blue Book, where we looked at the prospects of what happens if Trump wins in November, what happens if Biden wins in November, and obviously things change now that Biden's not going to be on the ticket in November. But I think one of the big things we took away from that publication was, as much as we have two distinct pathways, Trump versus Biden, what we found more than anything else is that the sort of purple book, the long-term trends that stays the same, that was the longest component of our publication. But why is that? It's because you look at the structural dynamics in what the U.S. and Australia are dealing with right now. Does it matter, like, who wins in November when you can consider the fact that every U.S. president will want to, A, champion ties with countries like Australia and Japan, with alliances there, B, champion growing ties with growing nations like India, C, stand up to a revisionist China that is causing trouble everywhere, D, ask for allies and partners around the world, but especially Europe, to do more. Let's not forget that it's not just Trump who thinks that a lot of NATO members are not pulling their weight. This is something that Democrats, including the Obama administration, said regularly, but perhaps just behind closed doors. And so I think that no matter what, either a Harris or a Trump presidency is going to see Australia continue to do well. Let's not forget that it was the Trump administration that only did a few state dinners, but chose Australia to be one of the recipients of those state dinners. And then just a year later, or maybe 18 months later, the Biden administration chose Australia to also be a recipient of a state dinner. Those are expensive, time-consuming affairs. And as a president, there's nothing more valuable than time. And the fact that Australia has now received 2 state dinners in a row, I think, is telling. Australia has never mattered more in the history of the U.S.-Australia alliance to Washington. The views of Australia and the role of Australia, it is incredibly consequential. And I think a lot of people may be asking what happens to really complex aspects like of the relationship, like AUKUS. And I think that continues to proceed regardless of whether it be a Harris or Trump administration in 2025. Ultimately, I think if you look at the dynamics in AUKUS, what is AUKUS? It is Australia paying money to the United States to expand their defense industrial base in order to buy nuclear-powered submarines, which would allow Australia to be more of a burden sharer in the region, to take up more responsibility for its own security, and to, let's be honest, stand up to revisionist powers, including China. Why would the Trump administration be against that whatsoever? I think they've already basically Trump-proofed this arrangement as much as you can Trump-proof anything. And so I think no matter what, Australia fares well moving ahead. And so I think I'm so glad folks are interested in U.S. politics, and people will hear about the very different views on the different between the two camps of the Harris and the Trump campaigns. But on foreign policy, and especially in Asia and the Indo-Pacific, I think there's infinitely more commonality than not.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jared. Appreciate your insights on that. And I guess it's fair to say that expect no change there with regards to the relationship. And then just like a final point in terms of kind of which will be helpful for the audience is just to understand, what are the key events or the key factors to watch ahead of the 5th of November election? Like, what are you going to be most focused on, from now leading into the election?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a few things. First, I want to know about the debates. I think Kamala Harris has shown time and time again that she is a good debater. J.D. Vance is actually also a good debater. One thing I should actually flag, I forgot to mention before, is one of the many reasons why I think J.D. Vance was a mistake of a pick is that J.D. Vance won the state of Ohio in the Senate race by 2 points. Every other statewide Republican, major statewide Republican race in 2022 won their races by double digits. So he's already proven himself to underperform in the region. With that said, he is an exceptional debater, and I want to see who and when the debates happen. How many debates are there? If I'm Kamala Harris, I think I'd want to do a few debates, not just one or two, because I think she would be able to make a far more forceful argument against Trump than Biden ever was able to. And I don't think they need to hide her like they did Biden. So that's one thing is the debates when that happens. Two, what they do with the Harris campaign does with their vice presidential running mates. How do they shop them around? What type of campaigning do they do? Where are they campaigning? Let's not forget in 2016 that Hillary Clinton barely did very much campaigning in the Midwest compared to other states. They completely misread the electoral map and underestimated Trump's electoral prospects. And so I'm paying attention to where they are campaigning. Three, I'm looking at the Democratic National Convention next month. Barack Obama, we all remember him as president, but he got his start at a Democratic National Convention when a few of the wiser heads saw that he had a lot of potential. He was just an Illinois state senator, as in he was in Springfield, Illinois. He wasn't in D.C. whatsoever. And they saw that he was a compelling speaker with a compelling narrative and background, and they gave him a speaking slot that went viral in 2004. The Democrats obviously went on to lose that presidential election to George W. Bush, but it was Obama's viral moment there that really set up his political career. So I want to see, like, at that Democratic National Convention, who they are championing, to see who's maybe the future face of the Democratic Party. And because I think in many ways, as much as everyone was concerned about the fact that, as we all saw, most Americans did not want these two old men to be running for president, there's actually quite a deep bench in the Democratic Party. Because, in my view, the Democratic Party is far more diverse than the Republican Party. I don't mean diverse in terms of demographics. I mean diverse in terms of political persuasions and sort of ideologies. Right now, we just saw what was technically the Republican National Convention, but it really was the Trump convention. There was Trump literally in big white letters behind all the speakers. It was a Trump thing through and through. So I'm looking at the Democratic National Convention, and then again, I want to see how both campaigns continue to choose where they spend the most amount of time. As I said before, there's nothing more valuable for a president than their time. There's also nothing more valuable for a campaign than their time. So how are they spending their time, and where are they spending their time? I think if I'm a Trump campaign, then I'm concerned that basically this was a very inside baseball type of choice in J.D. Vance. It was not a choice that really speaks to the masses. Basically, I think this choice won the hearts and minds of conservatives on Twitter or X. I don't know if it really is going to translate to a broader electoral successes. So I'm keen to see how they spend their time moving forward.
Great. That's great, Jared. Really appreciate your thoughts on what we should be focusing on from here. Really appreciate, Jared, your time and insights, and thank everyone for joining us. I did want to let everyone know that Commonwealth Bank has engaged Jared until the end of 2024 to keep our clients and our staff up to date on geopolitical happenings. So if you're interested in attending and being involved, please speak to your Commonwealth Bank contact, to make sure that you're on the invite list for that. Jared, really appreciate your time. I know you're super busy, not just at this moment, but you'll be flat chat leading into the election. So we really appreciate your time and your insights. Thanks again, and we'll be speaking again soon, no doubt. Thanks, Jared.
My pleasure.
And thanks everyone for joining. Cheers.
That does conclude our conference for today. Thank you for participating. You may now disconnect.